Okay, welcome everyone to the Community Engineering Hangouts. Today we have very interesting topic. The whole meeting will be dedicated to the Storefront API. We have representative from the product organization, from the architecture team, from the development team. So we will have a lot of interesting information here today. And we will start with Igor Minyailo, who will provide for us like general overview of the Storefront API, how it looks like. So, Igor, move on.
Okay, Doc. Hi guys, my name is Igor Minyailo. I'm lead Magento architect, and today, I will start this meeting. We have pretty rich deck today. We have several different tracks to cover, so that I will cover the general overview of the Storefront project and how everything started. So some retrospective and where we are now. So the Magento monolith, as you know it right now, and as you love it, might be represented on this diagram. And here you might see that even so we have quite a lot of components, and even so that Magento monolith has a modular structure, those components are highly coupled to one another, so that it's not possible to scale those components independently out of each other. And it's quite a typical approach of scaling Magento is when you just duplicate the existing component and just multiply it many times. Even so that in Enterprise Edition of Magento, we provide the possibility to extract the data storage. For example, as you can see it here on the slide, we provide the possibility to extract the checkout database. It's not possible to do it on the code level because the checkout component is pretty highly coupled to other components. And here we have another. So you might ask us why we don't make the refactoring and why we not decouple the component and not provide the possibility to scale it separately and not provide the possibility to install it separately. And actually the main reason is that when we will be doing that, we will introduce quite a lot of backwards incompatible changes, because all the decoupling of the components will lead us to change the dependency, will lead us to change APIs and other either classes or interfaces which you guys are dependent on in your customization. That's why those changes will be pretty impactful for the third-party code. And here another thing you might notice from this diagram that we already have two different data flows. Oops, we have some.
Hey guys, if you are not talking, can you put yourself on mute? Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Another important stuff here, you might already notice that we have two different data flows, and both of them handle user requests differently for admin scenarios and for the shopper scenarios. We have different set of APIs. For admin scenarios, we have REST, while for Storefront, we have GraphQL. And everything is pretty different until the time we come to the implementation. Because for GraphQL implementation, we still rely on the same set of service contracts we have for REST. And that's why, for example, this is the main root cause for us that our GraphQL APIs are not more performance efficient than REST API endpoints, because we currently don't have the benefits of using either patch updates, and taking into account that the underlying layer is pretty much the same for both REST and GraphQL. We're supposed to either retrieve entity as a whole or persist entity as a whole, and we are losing the potential performance benefit we might achieve here. So the main idea was to, and this idea actually appeared probably 2 or 3 years ago, was to make a separation of concern between the admin and the Storefront. And probably you're pretty familiar with the concept which we started to push I would say probably 2 years ago, and that concept was named the service isolation. And you might find the design document. So this is a public design document which is available on Magento architectural GitHub, and this document introduces the idea of the separation on two different applications. So you might see the storefront application and the admin application, and the main idea here was that for quite a long time we just considered that admin and the storefront is just two different representation of the same business scenarios, of the same data, and so on and so forth. While since the time this proposal was introduced, we started to consider as two different applications or two different set of applications. So that here you might see with different colors, we try to highlight the corresponding components which should be synchronized to one another between those applications. And we are not like the time flies, and our design ideas and our design vision also changes along that time. So that here you might find the way how we end up what we end up with, in particular for catalog storefront application, and Anton Kapler will later talk it through in more details. But the main idea was that we are just supposed to introduce two different applications, the storefront application and the store management application, and the current admin panel and existing monolith might be considered as a store management application, because we don't want to introduce the backward incompatible changes there. We want to preserve existing APIs as much as possible, but along with that, we want to introduce a new application on a side, and taking into account that this new application being developed from scratch, we are not impacting and we are not introducing backward incompatible changes to existing monoliths. And another thing that, and especially we started to face those cases after Adobe acquisition, we see that many merchants who come to Magento right now, they already have some e-commerce environment in place. They already have some e-commerce system in place, and they just consider Magento as a lightweight storefront. So that for many of those merchants, they no need to have any Magento admin panel at all, because they have either product information management system or enterprise resource planning system, or some system which manage logistic and so on and so forth. So that they're pretty much interested in a lightweight storefront application, while all the backend part already exists, and they just want to integrate it with the Magento storefront. So the main point here is the exchangeability. So each of those applications might be substituted to another part. And here you might see the intermediate part is the event broker. Event broker is also an application which is supposed to provide the ETL, so the extract, transformation, and the load from one system to another system. So the main responsibility is to match different API provided by both systems. And let me talk through, and just to highlight and just to emphasize that we are not trying to represent the same API in different way. I mean, because especially we face this problem at the beginning when we started to provide the GraphQL coverage. We started to provide the GraphQL coverage, repeating all our mistakes and just trying to implement our existing REST API on another language, with another semantic of GraphQL. So when we are talking about the storefront application, here we are trying to actually to fix all our non-issues and to make some and fix some of the design decision which we already been done on Magento monolith, and which can be fixed on a new system which we are developing from scratch. So here, for example, you might see that one of the issues, and it's still a problem we need to solve for different domains, is the bidirectional data flow. And because currently for catalog, which I described earlier, we have just a unidirectional data flow when we have the product information management system, which supplies the data to the storefront application. And this product information management system can be considered as a source of truth. While here, for example, either for customer domain or for checkout domain, we will end up having two different data flows. Because, for example, in case of customer, the same customer might be either created by admin on admin part, while the same customer might be created as a result of the user registration via the storefront application. And here we need to introduce the possibility of synchronize this data. We need to provide the functionality to avoid that cycling of the data, which will go back and forth, and so on and so forth. So it's pretty interesting design decision we still need to make for different storefront domains. If we'll go deeper, and I just wanted to make you some brief introduction of all the domains which will be affected by the storefront application and by the new design which we going to introduce in the scope of efforts which we combine as a storefront application. For example, here we have the checkout flow, and many of you, especially those who are facing some performance problems with checkout, know that currently we don't have the explicit segregation between the cart and quote. And we call them interchangeably either cart or quote on the level of our APIs, but taking into account that we have explicit separation of the cart and quote, we are calling and we are recalculated all the totals on each operation of adding item to the cart. And this introduced quite a lot of problems for us, especially for B2B scenarios where the size of cart may be really big. That's why, as a main design approach for the new checkout flow, which should be addressed in the scope of storefront application, will be explicit separation of cart and quote entities. You might also find the explicit design, which describe all the existing state and how we might proceed further on Magento architectural GitHub, using the search phrase as an alternative checkout flow. So there you might find the design prepared by Evgen Sentyabov, which describe the idea behind the new checkout flow. Here another problem which we are also trying to address is a huge number of permutations of prices, which also a big issue for B2B merchants. And the main root cause of the problem is that currently we are storing all the possible permutations of prices based on product ID, website ID, and the customer group. And why it's the biggest problem for B2B? Because we have as you know, we have quite a lot of logic in B2B based on the customer group. So this is the thing which we use for segregation of different categories and types of merchants. And now our index actually make all those permutations, and that's why we are building such a big index. That's why we spend quite a lot of time on building this index, and this sometimes become a bottleneck for us. That's why in the scope of the storefront application, we are going to introduce a new entity, which we call the price book. And the price book, actually, here you might see on the slide, it defines the subset of product subset by website and by customer group. And here we have a default store group where we have possibility to make a fallback to. We currently don't have this design publicly available, and we are still working on this design. Andrei Konov is working on this design, and I believe in the nearest time it will appear on our open public architectural GitHub, where you might see how we are going to change the price API and how we're supposed to solve the problem of all the price permutation and the long indexation process. So you might also see that, and here I just want to emphasize that we are not trying to duplicate of what we already have in Magento monolith, but we are trying to reconsider all the existing approaches, and we are trying to fix all the known issues and non-design gaps we already have in monolith. Here you might see that we, on the level of Storefront application, we are also targeting the staging, because we will need to differentiate different versions of the data. And this also should be addressed in staging. And currently we also have some draft of design, and the main design document will appear pretty soon on GitHub architecture as well. And as you already realized, we are making some changes in the scope of particular domains. And the main idea here is to have an ability to extract and to scale those components independently out of each other. And if we have, for example, a bottleneck, or if merchant has a bottleneck in a catalog component, he should be able to scale catalog independently out of either checkout or search, for example. That's why we need to introduce it, and along with that, the client application, so the front end should be not aware about all this complexity we have on a backend side. That's why what we are doing here, we are introducing the BFF, the layer of BFF, which stands for backend for frontend, and we are currently playing around with the different standalone GraphQL servers like Apollo or Fastify, and we are trying to stitch the GraphQL schemas provided by each of those independent components. And the main idea of the GraphQL standalone GraphQL server will be to route the request to the precise component. And having this additional tier in a way of the standalone GraphQL server, what we are changing fundamentally here, we are changing the idea of the API, because those of you who are with Magento for quite a while, when hearing the term of API, you unavoidably consider some either PHP interface or PHP class, or like some PHP entity we have in our code base. While here we are changing the idea behind the API terminology, so that we are starting to consider the API is not some PHP interface, but rather a payload. And you might see here that like the payload matters here. And we will be sending the payloads in gRPC, probably in REST. And currently we have an idea to have all the east-west traffic being sent and being operated through the gRPC. First of all, because of the performance reasons, and the second of all, first of all because of the performance reason, and the second of all because it's language agnostic. So if you'll go further and show you some like desirable state diagram which is still evolving, and those diagram might change pretty drastically in the future, we will end up with something, some system which is currently described in the slide, where we'll have the components. All those components will have some service mesh system, and this service mesh system will provide the possibility of tracking calls to different components, and the service mesh will either target those calls to the service which deployed like nearby. I mean, deploy like if we have a collocated deploy, or particular request might go through the service mesh, and our RPC remote procedure call proxy, and it will be targeted, for example, to the SaaS service. That's why currently, and you might also find the design on our GitHub architectural repo, we are talking so much about the catalog and the search segregation. That's why we're supposed to provide the possibility to scale catalog and search independently out of each other. And like we are already started to make some R&D process over the SaaS search, so that we might end up with having a component, storefront component of catalog being deployed in one place, while the SaaS search will be deployed on another place, powered by Adobe Sensei, and the communication between those services will be done through the service mesh, and it will be done we are either gRPC or similar set of technology. Also, you might also see that we are trying here, like all our services will be more and more integrated with Adobe, so that, for example, to provide the better demand for security, we'll get more integration, and all the authorization and certification will be done through the identity management services by Adobe. We're going to use all the asynchronous possibilities of Adobe I/O services and Adobe Pipeline, and we're supposed to provide, here you might see that the third-party developer eventually will have a possibility to provide an extension point which will be called not in the scope of the process, and when I say process, I mean the PHP process, but it will be called outside of the initial, like either PHP or other language process, so that it will give a possibility for third-party developers to write their their extension in a language agnostic way. And just to highlight you some ideas, what actually it means language agnostic in our case, you might find here that we already started to define all our new APIs and the data structure in proto definitions, and based on those proto definitions, we are generating. So here you might see the product description in proto buff, and here the shipping service described in proto, so that based on those language agnostic definition, we might just generate some language specific entities with the proto C compiler. So here, for example, we already started to generate PHP interface and PHP classes with those definitions. And yeah, here I already mentioned that we have quite an interesting bunch of designs, and here is a design which defines the segregation between catalog and search, which is pretty interesting because we are right now working on the catalog headless storefront application, and Anton Kapler will provide more updates on this. And regarding the proto, a little bit later, Andrei Konosov will make some demo where he will show the gRPC and how the proto works right now. So this is pretty much all from my side. This was just a brief introduction, and the main idea here was just to show you that we are reconsidering and we're introducing quite a lot of ideas to all the existing domains of Magento, so that we are trying on the level of design to solve all the existing problems, and some of those problems were in the Magento from the very beginning, like, for example, checkout process. And we just cannot solve them earlier because it would introduce such a drastic changes to the Magento. So that's why I really encourage you guys to participate, to check out all our designs, and we'll be trying to be more and more transparent and not to hide anything from you. This is pretty much all. Thank you.
Thank you, Igor, for such huge presentation with a lot of information. I believe we definitely need your presentation included to some links and share with the community too. So let's move on. The next will be the Nishant presenting their backlog and roadmap for the project.
All right, guys. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can you? Yes, okay. Yes. I've been having mic issues since morning. All right, so I will keep it brief since Igor covered most of it. One thing I want to make sure I reiterate is Storefront will be an open source effort, and we are working right now to open up the catalog report to public so all of you can contribute and participate in making this a great project. And in terms of scope, we are looking at an early access program for catalog Storefront around Q1 of 2021, so about in 3 quarters. And the scope for that early access program will be the existing catalog and search GraphQL coverage. So all the catalog queries, product categories, layered navigation, all of that will be covered. We'll have separate indexes or whatever storage we are going to be choosing for catalog. And then we are also looking at the bulk support, including patch. And as Igor showed you the proto definition, so that means we will ensure that the Storefront APIs are gRPC compatible. And the last one on the scope is the Node.js implementation, just look either Apollo or Fastify, whichever technology we end up choosing, we will have a separate implementation outside of the monolith for the GraphQL. So this is the current scope. It is on our catalog Storefront repo, which is currently private. And as I said, we are working on opening it up. And we have a pretty heavy backlog already with a lot of over 60 issues already created. And if you're familiar with the Magento 2 backlog, it's exactly the same process, looks exactly the same, but it's specific to catalog Storefront. So as soon as we open this up, you are free to start contributing and collaborating with us. All right, and if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. We are all monitoring your questions, and we'll answer as we see your questions. So I'll pass it back to Stanislav.
Thank you, Nishant. So yeah, guys, write your question to the chat because we don't have much time. We need to continue. So the next presenter will be Anton with catalog design.
Hi guys. Wait a second, I will start sharing my screen. Okay. I believe that Igor has already covered the main concept and idea, so I will speak more about the details shortly. So what we have right now, current our storefront which is a GraphQL, highly coupled with our monolith application. It couples through the resolvers, which limit us in many different ways. First of all, we are limited in scalability because scalability of our storefront, as it was always, is the same scalability as we have for a whole Magento. Performance also affected by direct invocation of models that we have on presentation layer. This is not bad, but still it has some limitations. And of course, it's because of over-normalized structures that we have to perform some calculation on each request, even from storefront operations. This is what we want to change with a new design. So we, as Igor mentioned, we are going to introduce a series of new services which will be exclusively applicable for storefront operation, like catalog, like search, and I believe a lot of you already faced with Adobe recommendation service, which is a good example of how it should look like. Something independent, pretty scalable, quick, and performant. So to achieve this, we have to build an integration with an existing data, because we don't want to change. We don't want to move from Magento responsibilities that it has right now. Magento works well as an admin application, and we don't want to change it at all. But we want to provide a way to extract data from Magento, transform data in some manner, and serve this data through the different storage, different API, which will give us much better performance and scalability, especially for storefront requests. To see more bigger picture, I believe that all of you face situations that you had to integrate multiple services together. We think about it, so our storefront will be capable to connect not only with Magento, it has to be capable to be connected to any systems that we may want to integrate into it. For instance, in case you have a separate PIM system, or you have a separate content system, in desirable future, instead of writing direct integration into Magento, you will have to provide a separate connector, like a message broker, which will connect original source of data with the data projections that we are going to build with the storefront catalog. Diving into details, what should be done to achieve this? First of all, we know that right now Magento API does not have enough coverage to return enough data to build storefront projection. In scope of this project, we are going to extend our export API, and with this export API, partially we will resync some of our entities, but not too much. Mainly expose the data that you and GraphQL will really need to build storefront part. We will expose not only export, also we are going to expose a series of events which will notify outside observers about changes inside of Magento. All of you are already familiar with concepts of events. It will be something similar, but externals like webhooks or something. By using these webhooks, developer will be able to build a broker which will be able to observe all changes and call export APIs each time when it receives information that something was changed on Magento side. Message broker. This is another sub-application that you would always hear in this project. The role of this component is to connect different systems together. As the first step, definitely we will be focused on integrating Magento and Storefront APIs. But for future, you will see more message brokers or integration brokers. It really depends on books you are reading. It could be named in both ways. These brokers will be responsible to listen to external events on system, which is a source of truth for our storefront, pulling data from these external systems, transforming data to be compatible with storefront APIs, and import this data into storefront storage. And the last but not the least component in our diagram, this is catalog storefront. As I mentioned before, we would like to break limits, bypass limits that we have right now with Magento scalability. So the main purpose of this component is to be as performant as it possible and as scalable as it possible. And we're going to put into it not a lot of logic. Most of this logic will be implemented in the scope of import API. With import API, you will be able to fulfill storefront APIs with data from different sources that you would like to connect. And with read API, you will be able to connect your storefront service with storefront implementations like GraphQL or whatever you would like to get. It's pretty all regarding new components and subsystems that we are going to have in scope of this project. So I'm returning back to Misha. Misha?
Not Misha, I believe.
Okay, who is next? And the next probably will be Igor.
Yes,
Igor
Stas
facilitator. Sorry, Misha, you was facilitator for so long, so I cannot change my mind. You might facilitate forever, so go ahead.
Let's move on. Yeah, Anton, you're right. The next one will be Igor with presentation of product creation. Well.
Hello. All right, I'm going to show a demo very quick. This demo will include creation of the product in Magento admin, which was called the back office on Anton's diagram, or sometimes we reference it to as a PIM. And also on this setup, I have a message broker which will call Magento backoffice when after the event was published, that product was created, fetch the data from backoffice API and ingest the data in the Storefront application. So currently it's still deployed on my instance as a monolith application, but the idea that in the future this will be 3 different applications. All right, so I have this a GraphQL request to the Storefront part of the application. I currently have just one product with some EAV attributes. I'm gonna go ahead and create another simple product. I will call it test2. I'll select some price. We'll fill out some basic attributes. Assign it to a category. We select some attributes. And now I am saving the product, and once after the product is saved, reindexer is running on the background. Reindexer updates index on the back office in the back office, and once the index is complete, back office will publish event that hey, we have this product created, and that event is going to pick up by a message broker, and message broker will call back office API, get the data of newly created product, and by now it should be ingested by Storefront application. Message broker pushes data in the Storefront application. So now we can see our product with the name test2 in our Storefront application, and this is basically the demo. If you want to look at the code base and familiarize yourself what is going on and where the project are, one of the things, one of the pages that might be helpful for you is this page where it's described how we introducing APIs in the Storefront, export APIs, import APIs, catalog Storefront APIs. You may find this page helpful. I'm not going to stop on it because we have a limited time, but it may give you an idea of what is going on the project right now, what all of those pull requests are about. I think this is it. I'm going to turn to Stanislav.
Thank you, Igor, for the demo. It was really interesting and good presentation. So the next one is a guy who are working on the gRPC and want to share some good stuff with us. So Andrei, go ahead.
Hello. So actually today I will show you the integration of Storefront API with our GraphQL server. So the demo will be, the first part of the demo will be very similar to what Igor just showed you. So but I'm doing it in more headless way. So for demo purposes, I just injected in some of existing GraphQL tests, grabbed the fixture from it and the query. And the query should actually return the data. So nothing really new here. Let's wait a little bit. And yeah, you can see that data is coming. There is not so much difference from the flow point of view right now, maybe except the performance. So we are currently taking the data from very separate storage, which is Elasticsearch. As you can see, there is some category data, there is the product data as well. I can actually show you what we have here. So as you can see, all product information is stored in Elasticsearch, and we just taken it much faster comparing to the monolith. But also there are additional changes I would like to share today. So as Igor already mentioned, we are using the protobuf in order to specify our Storefront API. So we are actually writing the code in protobuf, and then we are launching a special compiler which creates Magento modules for us. So catalog Storefront API module was generated automatically, and you can see that we are asking not to edit those files. What else? So I saw the question in chat about Java and why we have Java in some proto files. And you're right, we may use Java, you may use Java, because the protobuf format is cross-platform, cross-language. And let's say if you already have some inventory management written on Golang or Java. You can easily connect your inventory to our catalog using contracts described in proto format. Yeah, we are describing everything in proto, and proto is a native format for gRPC services. So why not to try to expose our generated code through the gRPC actually and see what happens. So this work is not released yet. It is on very early stages, but it works. Right now, I'm trying to launch the gRPC server on top of the same code which is used in our GraphQL. So we are sharing the code, and also I will try to launch the support tool. Yeah, it is launched. So as you can see, the same services which are described here in proto, but like get products, get categories, import products, import categories, are exposed through gRPC. We can select any of them. For example, let's try to request one product for store number 1, and I want to retrieve the name back. So as you can see, it just works. And the notable difference is that I'm not sure if you see it, but it works almost immediately. So I'm sending multiple requests right now. And if we compare it with the GraphQL, which still works through the monolith right now, it just works notably slower comparing to gRPC. And if you're interested in exact numbers, we can go back to the console. And there was some warm-up phase. And then we just start handling requests really fast. So we are spending like 10-8 milliseconds on one request. And good thing about these interfaces is that they support batching. And if we need to fetch information for 2 products, for example, we can specify 2 IDs and get twice more data back. And a good thing is it has very little impact on performance. So we are still consuming almost the same time in the PHP. So at least for me, the numbers looks really great. We will share more numbers later. Then we finish that task. All of this is achieved because of gRPC application server, and gRPC application server is possible because new modules, new Storefront API is actually stateless. So we are not keeping customer sessions there. We are not keeping old store manager, which is handling multiple completely different scenarios. And that allows us to serve multiple HTTP, gRPC, any kind of request in the same PHP process from multiple customers. One more nice thing about new schema is that module which is generated from the protobuf is very portable and could be installed on in 2 ways. So for the merchants who are happy with performance, happy with current things on their instances, we can install that module in monolith, and it will work very similarly to what you just see in GraphQL part of the demo. For merchants who want to improve the performance, scalability, attach completely different systems, they can deploy everything in isolation, and that model will work as well. So seems like we are building a pretty flexible system that will simplify life for many merchants. Will cover a lot of use cases. So I think that's it from my side.
Thank you, Andriy. So guys, let's move on. The next one is Olga presenting the dev box for the development, I believe. Olga, we don't hear you.
You are on mute.
Hello. Yeah.
Hello.
Now you should be hearing me. Sorry. So yeah, I want to be pretty quick, and I don't want you to remember all the commands that you need to run, but rather to remember where to find information that you need if you want to join the project, or if you want to see how it all works and to run it locally. So again, I want to emphasize that the repositories are private right now, but as you get access, where you should go is first of all Catalog Storefront project, and here you can go to wiki, and we have a bunch of information here which we will be expanding. So if you are joining the project, there is page onboarding, which should help you start. So there are two important parts here: code sources. As you know, Magento consists of multiple repositories, even right now, and for this project it's not easier. It becomes more complex and more repositories can be added. So how you can find which repositories and branches you need? There are a few ways to do it. First of all, if you are working on the project, you should find such information in the ticket. It would look like this. So just an example ticket, and there should be a list of branches that you need to use for this ticket. If this doesn't exist, ping us in Slack channel. We have dedicated Slack channel, which is also linked here in contacts. It's closed, so if you're not on the project, you probably won't access it right now. Then another way to find a list of branches and repositories is to go to Storefront Cloud project that we have, and it has, if you're familiar with Cloud project, it has Magento and YAML file, and it describes all the repos, and like if you choose some branch, feature branch, it would describe all the branches that you need. So that's another way if you know your feature branch in Cloud project. And third way is just asking in our Slack channel. That will be the fastest probably, but like not so documented. And next thing is local development. So if you know all the branches, how do you actually run it locally? There are three ways that we describe. First is Magento Cloud DevBox. It's official Magento Cloud DevBox, and it should be good if you just want to run and test the application to see how it works. You can find steps that you need to do to run our application, but also we have a script that you can create. So just copy and create a script with it and run it with project dir, which is just empty dir or non-existent dir where you want to create your project. GitHub token, and in the documentation you can find the link to GitHub, which describes how to create GitHub token here. So it's needed to fetch repositories because they are private. And branch name, which is a branch of Cloud project that I just showed. So you need to know which feature you're working on and which branch on Cloud project it corresponds. And based on that information, it will fetch all the repositories that are needed. So if you run this script, it will pull all the repositories, switch to the branches, and run devbox to access Magento, and it will be under Magento 2 Docker for you. So that's one easy way, and each approach describes pros and cons. So in this case, it's a little bit difficult to really develop because files are not linked, they are just copied to Magento file structure. Another devbox which we have is from our colleague Andrei Lugovey, and it actually links all the files, and there is a link here that you can find with this Docker. So you just clone the repository, you go to this link and read the documentation on how to set it up. And the third option is custom devbox. So if you are happy with the infrastructure that you already have for local development, you just go to code sources section, find which repository branches you need, and set up your custom devbox. Yeah, there is some information about testing and troubleshooting, but basically I think that's it. We have only 2 minutes left, but we still have one person to speak, so I'll stop here. And just remember that there is Slack channel, and even if you're not on the private Slack channel, you can ping one of us just on the community Slack.
Thank you, Olga. It was really fast. So yeah, we have one topic left on the agenda regarding the processes and onboarding, and Misha with Denise will share the information. So guys, go on.
All right, good. I have 2 minutes, and I guess I don't have much information to share. So if you're excited to see this meeting and sharing information with community, we're working hard right now with legals to prepare all the codebases to be open source. So I guess it will take a couple of weeks to make them available for everyone for contribution. As well as we are wrapping up with documentation. You saw a lot of very interesting new things in architecture changes and etc. So we have working out right now on onboarding. So we'll share the information how to do the onboarding on this project, how to contribute, how to run the tests, and so on. And we will share this information with more details a little bit later. But just for your understanding, the expectation is about a couple of weeks right after the shutdown we will have next week. So that's probably it from my side. And if you have any kind of questions, please feel free to ask me.
And just to add, we do have on Magento community, we do have a channel named Storefront Apps. So if you have any questions specific to Storefront Apps, please join the channel.
Okay, I believe that's it. So guys, please join the Slack channel. We will share the information once we will make repositories public. So yeah, stay tuned. Thank you all for the attending. Bye guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you guys. Bye.